You can do it in your mind or you can do it verbally, as you wish. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all our teachers have long, long lives, and may they continue to teach us throughout our lives, this and all future lives. All that we are discussing here is by the kindness of our teachers. So let's keep them in our prayers, keep them in our minds, and pray for their long lives all the time. And whatever I'm presenting today and whatever we are discussing is also through the kindness of the teachers. So let's keep that in our minds. Last time we started a very small but important discussion on what is a cause and what is an effect. Let's do a small recap of that, and hopefully there will be some questions and that we can discuss, and then look at two important dimensions of cause and effects as a further discussion today. And the third session, the following, we might do divisions of causes and effects in a more comprehensive way, or we might also discuss how causes and effect lead to a discussion on impermanence. Both of those are important things to do. We'll see how the sessions pan out and how the discussion goes, and we'll take it forward from there. So last time so it's a small recap. We defined cause as producer. Just one word definition, which is handed down to us for 2,500 years, I guess. And the effect that is produced, that which is produced. It's very simple, very deceivingly simple, but producer and produced are the most important concepts that you'll find in Buddhist philosophy. And I guess not just in Buddhist philosophy, but it has been bone of contention in various shapes and forms among all philosophers from probably 3,000 years ago. And even now, the case is not yet settled. What are the producers, what are produced, how they are related, how they are not related, etc. And we discussed last time that one of the singular, unique insights of Buddha in this respect was that cause and effect are mutually inclusive. This again sounds very simple, but this goes against most of the non-Buddhist views about a creator God, about an uncaused reality, or many such other views which are not accepted by Buddhist philosophers. So the cause and effect are mutually inclusive. That statement encompasses a lot of depth, and the more we think about it, the more we'll come closer to the insights that Buddha would like to share with us. Next, we delved a little in what is substantial cause, and we said that that is the main producer of the thing as a continuum of its own substantial entity. So today we'll discuss what this continuation is, what the continuum means. But here basically is something that becomes something else, right? So that it is what is changing into something else, right? And the examples I will say the seed is changing into a plant or a sprout, right? We don't say that the water is changing into the plant, right? We don't say the soil is changing into the plant or the sunlight is changing into the plant, although all of those are what we call conditions, right? But what becomes it, what transforms, and that's a very key concept to understand. And we said there is at least one substantial cause to an effect. And parts of an object are not its substantial causes. This also includes something that we probably didn't discuss last time. The thought that something that two things which are existing together in terms of temporal sense, in terms of the same time, they can't be acting as the cause and effect of each other, right? So the parts, because they exist together with the whole, right? The parts can't be the cause of that whole, right? So that's a very important thing again to discuss, because when we're talking about continuums, these are temporal continuums. The cause is time-wise before the effect, so it can't be simultaneous. There are schools of philosophy who think that causes can be simultaneous, and there are various examples that are posited. I can share one in which they would say, when you have these, let's say, three sticks, kind of supporting each other and forming a kind of a tripod kind of a structure, right? Now this thing is, so stick one standing, the cause of the standing of the stick one is the standing of the stick two and stick three. And those standings of stick 2 and 3 are simultaneous with the standing of the stick 1, right? So it seems like that the causes, the stick 2 and 3, are simultaneous with the effect, which is stick 1 standing, right? So it does appear like that. And those kind of appearances do lead to a confused cognition or knowing that the causes can be simultaneous with effects. But Buddhists would say no, even that is not true. We would say we'll divide it in time-wise slots, kind of let's say moment 1, moment 2, moment 3, and we'll say that it's only the moment 1 of stick 2 and 3 which is supporting the moment 2 of stick 1. So it's the earlier moments of other sticks which are supporting the current moment of that stick, first stick. It is not the simultaneous moments of those which are supporting. And now it's very interesting. Now we have more technology, and if you see some very, very, very slow, excuse me, slow motion videos of, let's say, there's a jar of water, a glass jar full of water, and somebody is hitting a bullet into that, and you take a very slow motion kind of a video of it. Probably I can find some reference on YouTube on that, right? So it does appear without analysis that the shape of the water is caused by the shape of that jar, and the shape of the jar and the shape of the water which is in it are kind of simultaneous, right? Because the water is taking the shape of the jar, and it is, if the jar was of any different shape, the water would be into any different shape, right? Simultaneous with it, right? It's the same thing as like three sticks, right? That kind of example. But now when you look at those videos, it does appear that in the very, 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 very minute slots of time, at the moment when the glass is broken by the bullet and it is not yet reached the water part of it, kind of the shape of the water in that moment is still like that of a jar, although the jar is already broken, kind of thing. Maybe we can find something like that. So it's just a kind of side note, but in Buddhist philosophy, we would always assert, regardless of which Buddhist school we are following, I think all the schools, if maybe Vaibhashika, I need to check, maybe Vaibhashika does assert something like that, that there could be simultaneity. But other schools of Buddhist philosophy, they would say that cause and effect can never be simultaneous. The effect has to be followed. Effect has to, cause has to be followed by the effect, right? So that's something that we discussed last time. Then the cooperative conditions, although they sound like not so important, they are as important as the substantial cause, because without that the effect will not be produced. So they cooperate, but they are different from substantial causes because they are not the ones which are transforming into that effect, right? So like we discussed last time, if a seed is just lying on this table, it might lie here for years and years, it will not become a sprout, right? Because it needs those conditions of other things, right? Then we talked about a little what Acharya Dharma Kirti has to say about when does a cause become a cause. In general, we keep saying that that there is an infinite series of causes which has led to this effect, right? Which is not wrong, but which is very generic way of speaking, right? In a truer sense, a cause doesn't become a cause until the cooperative conditions come together and interact and change their nature so that they are now have they have kind of potential or ability to produce that effect, right? Before that, technically speaking, they are not even causes. And we talked about how in Lama Sangopa's composition, Three Principal Aspects of Path, you are not even working toward Buddhahood until you have generated bodhicitta properly, right? Although we say that all these, we are studying this much, we are doing this much effort, but without that generation of bodhicitta, we are not yet, technically speaking, gathering the causes for Buddhahood in that sense, right? Although they might be the causes that lead to the other causes which will be the causes to the Buddhahood, they are not directly the causes of Buddhahood yet. Yeah? So these are very important. That's why the graded path or Lamrim is such a well laid out thought by the great teacher Atisha in 9th and 10th century, where it was kind of started to take shape in the form of a very gradual, logical, cause-effect linked and kind of proven path to Buddhahood in a very organized way. Yeah. So we discussed, had a little bit of fun with this in terms of knowing what is the cause and what is the effect in these things. So we should develop that kind of critical faculty to read the texts in what they are trying to say. Ultimately, all teachings, in my humble opinion, boil down to cognizing what are the causes that produce the desired effect of Buddhahood and start to gather them in stages, right? That's all those instructions are. That's all the teachings, what they are, right? Then let's invite questions if there's any so far. Good morning, Joyaji. It's good to see you. Any questions or any points? Joyaji, you're on mute. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
It's so nice to have you there. I missed the first part, I will listen later.
You haven't missed much. You know all this, Joaji. You know all this. Yeah. Elena, yeah, you want to say something? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lokeshla. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear you. The Vaibhashika thing you said, they do say that some causes, at least that's what I've been studying, are simultaneous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Are there
yeah.
any Vaibhashikas now, like a school, who are still believing that, or they are like now people who say, okay, they believe that, but now it's proven to be not?
You know, in the current scenario, it is very difficult to say who is Vaibhashika or who is Sautantrika. These are basically now what is left to us is basically like a theoretical framework. We call that one set of tenets as Vaibhashika tenets, or one
Right.
sort of like that.
But there's
I'm
no
not sure whether practitioners,
definitive.
there might be practitioners, but we don't know, yeah, whether they
Okay.
call themselves
Like,
Vaibhashika or not, yeah.
okay. Because they
It's
say
very
the
difficult to
shadow
clarify.
and the shadow of the sprout are together. But as you said, now it's proven scientifically that it's always that one instant later, right?
Right. I mean, at least in the water jar and the bullet
Yes,
example, I saw that.
it's one.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you go deeper into it, right, there are many fine, very fine debates in Buddhist literature. I'll give you one example. I can't discuss it completely. Some people would say that, let's say you had a candy, right? Now, the the substance of that candy, the physical candy, right? And the taste of the candy, which is produced by that candy, right? Are simultaneous, right? You are tasting it when you have it in your mouth, right? So how is that they are sequential, right? Right?
Lokeshla,
There,
there's always that instant of first and second, I'm sure. No?
yeah, yeah. Well, but to be fair to the opponents, because that gap is not observed, how can we really say that there was a gap, right? I mean, so that's where a critical analysis is very important. That's why the insights of our teachers are so precious, because there are many things that are shared with us which are not available to ordinary day-to-day experience. But to a critical mind who thinks through these things is able to kind of make sense, yeah, it must be that way. You know, in Indian philosophy, there are kind of many things. We'll say the anu or the atom, right? The indivisible partless particle kind of thing. That's nobody has observed it, but there people say there must be like that because if you are able to break it further and further, it will be infinite regress kind of a thing, right? In the physical world, infinite regress. That's kind of doesn't make sense because that's not something that we observe. That's why there must be a partless particle. Now that sounds a very kind of valid argument, which some of the very rational Buddhist schools also hold, right? And many non-Buddhists also hold. But you know, in higher schools of Buddhism, will say that there is no such thing as partless particle, right? Which basically all these things are only conclusions that can be drawn through reasoning, which are not accessible to our direct observations. And that's why the study is so critical, right? That's why mulling over these things to, you know, really reflect what are we trying to observe and what our senses tell us and what the reality could be. So that's very important, right? Now, this continuum business is a tricky thing. We say that cause and effect are linked through a continuum, right? We'll say that they share a continuum. We use words like that. Although continuum itself probably has definition which, if I'm not forgotten, which says that that which has three or more moments or something like that, right? That's not so relevant here. What is more relevant here is the what the types of continuums are, and that's also important for our practice, and that also solves some bit of kind of philosophical questions that arose um, even between different schools of Buddhism, right? So there are two types of continuums, and in a way it's very easy to understand, but when you go deeper into it, it becomes more hazy. So let's say you have clay, and you make a pot out of it, right? And then next day, unfortunately, that pot is broken before you could even cook it or kill it, and it became kind of clay again, right? So now this continuity of substance, it was clay before it became a pot, it was clay when it was a pot, and it was clay even after the pot was broken, because the materially it was the same. Substantially, substance is a very loaded word, right? But if you get the sense of it, it's the same kind of the base which continued to exist even though the kind of form of it changed. The shape of it changed, but the material it remained the same, kind of a thing, right? So this is called a continuity of substance. When you say that the clay and then the clay pot made of that clay, they are a continuity, right? And even when the pot is broken, the continuity kind of remains. Something continues to be there. It's not as the pot is broken, there's nothing on the table, right? There is something that remains there, right? And even though it might be structurally or look-wise different than what was before, there is something there. So whatever that remains to be there through changing forms is that we call that substance which continues, or the continuity of the substance. Yeah. Then there is continuity of type, right? So that pot came into being and got broken, right? So pot is no longer there, it's gone, right? So that continuity of type is things which are made of that base, but which kind of come into being and go out of being, kind of thing, right? Now, why is this important? This gets actually complicated in terms of the type in various discussions and debates. But I think the most important part of it is to refute some people's notion that when all the afflictions of the mind are cleared, there's nothing remaining. As in, the mind itself is not remaining, as if there's nothing that exists after that, right? So there are some people who hold that kind of view, and it might be justifiably so, because we are continuously told that a mind is an afflicted mind, the conceptual mind. There are a lot of literature which would say that, it should indicate kind of in a rough way that that the afflictions are the kind of the basic compositional kind of things of the mind, right? So if the afflictions are gone, there is nothing there. If that in a more deeper kind of discussions, when you'd say that how does that go? That when you cognize selflessness, then the emptiness of mind itself, then what remains? There's nothing remaining there, kind of a thing, right? That becomes a little bit more complicated to deal in this kind of thing, and I'm not capable of that. But here, if we say more simply, that we'll say the mind continues as it is the foundational substance of the being, whereas the afflictions are like pots, right? They can be destroyed, they can be taken away, right? But when that afflicted mind, the affliction part of it is taken away, it's like taking away, it's like breaking that pot, right? So the continuity of substance of that mind continues when you achieve liberation. But the continued type of the afflicted mind, that afflictions are gone away, right? Like clay pot, two words are together, clay pot. So the potness is gone, but the clay is remaining. In the same way, afflicted mind, the afflictions are gone, the mind is remaining, kind of a thing, right? Something like that. I don't think I did justice to the topic, but is there any question that would probably help clarify this? Anything?
Sorry, Lokeshla, you said something. My internet is not great. What did you ask?
No, I'm just asking, is there any question? Is there anything that I can clarify?
No, that made sense. Meaning, it has to have afflictions are like stains. No, they have to be on something. You can't just have afflictions and then goes away and then nothing remains. That doesn't. From a layman, I'm not even talking from philosophy or psychology. Nothing. Just
Right,
that
right, right.
afflictions are something that has to be on something. No. I mean,
Right,
like a
right.
stained cloth. If you don't have the shirt, then what you want to remove the stains from?
True, true,
I know
true.
that's very simplistic, and I know that like the way Bhashikas say that mental continuum and mind are together. I don't know. There's a whole lot going on there. So I'm only giving you my simple understanding.
Right. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
Does the stainless happen first to a steel, or does the steel come into being first?
Sorry, say it again. Steel. Neil, could you say it again, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. It's stainless steel. I mean, that's how I was taught in the since childhood. So if there is a process to it, then how does it go? How does it happen? So is it like what is the process, sir?
Yeah, well, I'm a chemical engineer, but I've forgotten all that. But I'm sure there's a mix of a few other substances to iron, and then it becomes steel, and a different grade of it is called stainless steel.
Steel and chrome.
Chrome, yeah. So somebody is much more knowledgeable than me.
Yeah, no. So stainless steel is refined irons with an addition of chrome and a little bit of nickel. And the chrome, by oxidizing, is creating this shiny color, this mirror-like finish. And when you look at the color of stainless steel, in fact, it's the color of chrome that you see. It's not the color of iron. It's a mix.
At least that I got right. It's a mix. So that's your answer, Neil. But if you're thinking of it in terms of how I divided, you know, clay pot, like two words combined, if you're looking at it in that sense, I think it's not, I, maybe it can be thought of it this way, but there was, if you think of that iron as a base and you are adding other substances to change, but I think in this case all those substances that are added form the substantial causes of, they are kind of substance to the stainless steel, so it's not the same comparison. Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? All right, so we'll look at the next topic, which is also relevant for kind of dharma practice. There are conditions that we talk about in the sense of what is what produces consciousness, every moment of consciousness, right? Now, these conditions, the word used is, you can think of it as causes and conditions altogether, not just the conditions in the sense of substantial causes and cooperative conditions. This is a more kind of a generic word, which means basically causes for the in the context of consciousness. Yeah. So there are three of these. Let me just explain a little bit of background. So when we see something, let's see, I'm seeing a clock here, the small desk clock. There are at least three things which are happening. One is me cognizing it or seeing it as a clock. So the cognition part of it. Second is the seeing, as in the sense of that I used to, the I organ, EYE, used to see that object. As different from a smell that I use my nose for, right? Or a sound that I use my ear for. This is a thing with this shape and color, which I use my eyes to see, right? So there is a cognition part that I see that, oh, this is a clock. Second is the seeing part, right? And the third, what I saw a clock, right? So there are three building blocks of a kind of an experience of seeing something, right? One is that cognition of seeing. Second is kind of the sense power, we call it, and we'll discuss that, which is engaging, as opposed to, let's say, so this is eye sense power, which is engaging with this object rather than a nose consciousness or a ear consciousness. And the third is that object itself, whether it is a red or blue or green or a clock or a cloth or a mic or a computer, something like that. So based on these three, we know that there have to be three things that need to come together for the consciousness to arise. Right? So that object part, in this example, the clock, we call it the objective condition. So we have to have something to look at before we say that I looked at that, right? Then there is this unique governing, which is two parts, but let's just limit us to the unique governing part of it, which basically says that it is my eye which has to engage with the clock. It's not my nose which has to engage with the clock, probably because it doesn't smell, right? Maybe my ears could engage if there was an alarm clock and the alarm was ringing, but in this context right now, it is my eyes which are seeing because it has a shape and a color, right? So it is the eye sense power, which in Hindi I think we translate as indriya. We have indriya, indris, or the sense powers, which are very subtle kind of form, and very difficult to prove or to explain, but this is what at least the theory says. Now these sense powers are what are kind of then calling on or giving the kind of inviting or giving shape, not shape in the kind of physical sense, to what consciousness which will be engaged, right? So it is the eye consciousness which will engage, because it is the eye sense power which is the operating sense power in terms of the things which have color and shape, right? If it was an ear sense power, it would invite or engage the ear consciousness, right? Now these are not like siloed things. It's basically the consciousness taking on the cloth of ear consciousness or the eye consciousness, depending on which sense power is engaging with it, right? And the third thing is the we have to know it, right? So there is a clear and knowing experience. I know that there is a clock, right? So there has to be a knower behind all of these things. So that consciousness, which is kind of primed to cognize that object before the cognition happens. That's the immediately preceding condition, or the immediate condition that we call, right? To understand this better, maybe we can, some of you probably know there are non-discerning minds, right? Non-discerning minds are, consciousnesses are where, let's say now you are sitting on a cushion, but because your attention is toward this, you don't notice your cushion, right? Things like that. Why don't we notice it? Other two conditions are present. Objective condition, your cushion is there. Governing condition, your kind of physical sense power is there. Your skin is there, right? Touching it, right? But you don't notice it. That's because your mind is not primed toward noticing it. You don't have that immediately preceding condition to be noticing it, right? So this kind of a mental state, which then is eager to engage with the object, is the immediate condition. So when these three come together, our experience takes place, our knowing of a thing takes place, right? So I have written kind of a technical definitions, etc. We can go through them, but this is the kind of a gist of it. Here the example goes through, we say, let's take something, I took clock, but let's say blue color, right? So the objective conditions would be that would act mainly and directly to produce a direct perceiver apprehending the blue, having an aspect of blue, right? So here the blueness of the object, the part which the object itself is inputting, is giving for the consciousness to arise, that is being highlighted. So the example here is the blue, for example, the blue object. In my example, it would be the clock, right? So that object that is out there, basically, right? Now, there are many things which are mental in nature, right? We do have experience of things. For example, you can imagine Himalayas here sitting in Delhi, right? For those, because the object is not there, we'll say that objective conditions are not there, but other two, governing conditions and immediate conditions, might be there, right? Okay. Now this governing condition is from the perceiver side. Now I moved from the object to the perceiver, right? So it allows our various senses to engage in different ways, kind of thing. So we say that, how do we know actually, why should my ear not engage with the clock, right? Or my nose not engage with the clock. So it is a kind of an ability, unique ability divided for various sense sources, like the shape and form is one source, right? Then the sound is another source. So for each of the division of sources, we have corresponding sense organs, as well as behind those sense organs, the sense powers, right? So that's where the unique distinction is made, that which sense power would engage in with this kind of object. And then the cognition part of it, right, which is an umbrella kind of thing. For each of these sense parts, you would have a corresponding consciousness, right? So these are the three conditions. And these are kind of something that we do in basic Buddhist psychology. Many of these are common into many schools, even some, I would guess, non-Buddhist schools might also be having something similar presentation. Yeah. Any questions? Why are these important though? Any comments? Why do you think we should spend time looking at these? Well, for me, the one basic thing is that for the consciousness to arise, the objects are just one of the things, right? So when I'm getting angry, which is kind of mental, which is doesn't actually tie well with here, maybe, but maybe the object that I'm angry against is probably not even a part of my experience there, because other two conditions are my own, the governing condition and immediate condition. But I'm talking about emotion, which doesn't apply very well here. But there, we still think that we as subjects, we as the perceiver sides, have a significant role, indispensable role in wanting to engage with an object, because we have this immediate condition, and second, and how we engage with that object, right? Through which kind of sense parts we engage with that. So those two main conditions are actually with us. And some other thought that I want to leave ourselves with, and I don't have any answer, is why does this immediate condition arise? What wants me to engage in an object A versus object B? For example, why am I engaging in this clock at this point and not the tablecloth which is on the table at this time? Right? What makes that choice for us? Or is that a choice, or is that kind of automatic? And if it's automatic, we have just learned through cause and conditions there is nothing automatic, it has to have a cause. What propels the immediate condition to arise? What is the cause of that behind, right? Which makes me to engage with A but not with B. How do I make that choice? Or am I making that choice? And that many people might have different answers. Many would say it's just luck or serendipity. Some might just say that it is habituations. Some would use more loaded words like karma, that it basically rises through your past impressions, because maybe you find some things more attractive. I find the clock more attractive than the tablecloth, and that I find attractive because I'm more exposed to it and I've seen it more, and I've kind of, right, that is the past habituation. That's why I choose to engage. It's like, in a crowd, when my father is there in the crowd, I kind of instantly ignore everybody else and I just cognize my father there, right, in the crowd, and not everybody. Although in other two conditions, my eyes are there, my eye organs are there, and the sense power is there. The object condition, all the people in the crowd are there, but I'm kind of choosing to engage only with one person, right? So that others are kind of not affirmed. So how is that happening? What is within the field of our vision? Why are some things, or in the hearing also, or in any other things, we are picking and choosing, right? Is there a way to kind of get rid of that bias and have more encompassing kind of sensory experience? I don't know. Are these imprints, of course they can be changed, but are they imprints or just luck or serendipity or what? So these are very relevant philosophical questions which can arise through discussions like this, and it's worthwhile to ponder over this, right? Any questions or comments? Yeah.
For the condition that represents how they relate to a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
Can we train, for example, to change that, to improve the relation process? And separating these different causes is the first step to be able to identify a way to improve
Where to
our
intervene?
relation with this cause.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So, very, very valid point. If you want to engage with spiritual objects and improve our spirituality, one of the easy ways to do is to give us more objective conditions. We be in a place like this where we have all the teachers and their representations in terms of thankas and the statues present, right? So these are kind of trigger points. These are the conditions which will give rise to that subsequent cognition, right? I don't think there's much to be done with the governing condition, but there might be ways. But I think the immediate condition is where the training can happen a lot, the internal kind of training, rather than avoiding the external circumstances or giving access more to some external substances. The objective condition, we can, of course, train. You know, all those spy movies where, you know, the spy is well trained into looking at all the exit points as soon as he enters the building and cognizing this and that much more than a normal person would do. He's kind of trained himself into a different way of looking at a building or a situation, right? So these are the kind of how he is picked up for his self-defense, I guess, or for his professional competence, I guess, a certain way to look at things, right? So it is amenable to training. You're very right, and yeah. Any other comment? Joyaji, yes. You'll have to unmute, Joyaji.
Yeah, I was just going back to this, that first statement of yours on direct perceivers. And you linked it, I mean, you, not you, but your formula linked it to I sense power. But there
Yes,
is
that's an
also
example.
a direct perceiver, which is tactile, right? Like an
Yes.
infant in a womb, an infant and a baby in a womb can't see, but definitely feels what's going on even to the mother. Apart from its own feeling, pleasant or unpleasant, then it also experiences some of the mother's stress. And then a blind person touches things, or even if we're stumbling around in the dark, we have an idea in our mind that there is a door which has a handle. But even in the dark, we have this mental consciousness, and then we stumble around and if we hit the doorknob or the handle, open it in the dark.
Yeah.
Did I go out of my thing went away?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I thought you would be saying something more, but
Yeah, no, I was just saying that, is there any discussion in the original books? We get the simplified versions, but in, say, Vasubandhu, or I'm not sure where, Abhidharma Kosha, a more discussion on what is a direct perceiver. Because in the ultimate stages of meditation, then do you directly perceive the form and the formless worlds? That's what I'm asking. That is there some other medium by which we are perceiving things?
okay. So firstly, this discussion, because these three conditions are kind of requiring an objective condition, is more for the ordinary sensory perceptions, and that is in this context. But when you say that we as ordinary people also, when it's dark or if unfortunately somebody is blind, they are able to kind of quote unquote see a door handle in the darkness, right? Right. So I think there it is more of a combination of tactile perception, the hand reaching out for that door handle, as well as some sort of inferential cognition that what I'm holding must be a handle because it feels like that shape or that shape, right? So through use of reason as well as other sensory inputs, we are kind of supplanting the lack of vision that we had. We're kind of compensating for it. That doesn't mean that we are kind of seeing
We
it in the,
apprehend.
yeah. And about the
We're
formless,
apprehending.
we are apprehending that indirectly through other means. We are not limiting ourselves that,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that without eyes I can't figure out whether it's a door handle or not, right? I can touch, and if I know the shape well through my kind of hand, I would say, I'd reasonably say that, yeah, this must be a door handle, right? Without employing the eye consciousness. So about the form and formless, I'm not sure whether these are the objects of the direct perceiver. All I can say is Buddha's mind is supposed to be a direct perceiver 24/7, and those realms are cognized by him. Now, I can't say whether these were cognized by the eye consciousness of Buddha or the ear consciousness, that I don't know. This is just speculative then. Right? So, I don't have much to say on that. Ilenla, you have something to say?
Lokeshla, you used a very nice word which I haven't heard before, but it makes now a lot of sense. You said you primed that sense power or the sense consciousness to see something. It's primed to see or hear, or that made a lot of sense. So also now I understand that maybe a non-discerning mind is something that we can hone to not see a lot of stuff that we are sensing, and just hone in to prime it to see what we should be, like in bodhicitta or renunciation or whatever you need for those, that we need to kind of prime our minds towards. And is there some way of using that non-discerning mind in a better way? Meaning, it seems to be quite useful now suddenly.
Well, it is useful in the kind of a negative sense. If you prime your mind to see positive, virtuous things, automatically, because the mind, one conscious can engage, one mental against one object. You know that, right? One mental conscience can engage with one object at a time. We would hopefully, by training, engaging in objects which are kind of virtuous, or which are taking us toward Buddha rather than away from it, kind of a thing, right? So the training is more toward habituating ourselves to better thought patterns, better texts, better reasoning, sayings of the great people. Those things are kind of planting seeds into our minds to engage in those kind of activities or objects in more fuller way. We are more so this habituation is something that we're doing all the time. It's consciously, if you make effort to do it in the way that will next time, and I guess we can get rid of most of our bad habits through conscious thinking like that, or we can inculcate good habits through conscious thinking like that, because ultimately the way we see things, or things that we see, is dependent on how we trained for it, right? Yeah, so using that.
Why did they even then bring up non-discerning mind? It seems as if it's the opposite of a discerning mind, like almost the emptiness part of it. Not a discerning mind is a non-discerning mind. But anyway, that's
But
just
yeah,
just a thought. It's okay.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe you can train to not discern things, but I don't know. I'm not ready to somewhere and not experienced it, so I can't say much about it. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else? If not, then I guess we'll close the session and we'll with the dedication prayer. This is the Tushita dedication prayer, which is very, very nice. You can do it in your minds or you can do it verbally, whichever you choose. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish granting and wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, and the numberless sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of Vajrasattva, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state of Vajrasattva, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the three times in order to have good conduct. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lokeshla. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.